So we are live for the second Meet My Mates Who Love Jesus. I cannot believe it's actually already been a whole month since we did this, and I'm just as nervous, I'm not gonna lie. So hopefully I don't start freaking out. But yeah, I just want to thank everyone, first of all, who came along to the first one with Faisy. It was really amazing hearing from you all about how you just engaged with it and got so much from it. So special shout out to Kat. It really encouraged me. She called me absolutely in tears. I hope she doesn't mind me saying this, but I haven't given her last name. Because it just really gripped her, and she was being a good friend. She came on to support, as many of you probably are doing, with low expectations. And actually she really really enjoyed it. So that's what I'm hoping that will be the case for all of you lot tonight, and I'm sure it will be, because I'm so excited to introduce you to my guest. He's an absolute legend. And for those who don't know what you're watching, you've just found this on your news feed. Every month, the first Wednesday of the month, I'm going to be introducing you to somebody who I just really respect and admire from my life. So the one thing that they all have in common is they love Jesus, but they are all different ages. I've got guys, girls, different backgrounds. They're just really different, but you're going to love them all. And so I can see that tonight's guest is watching, so that is a good first step. We've passed the first technical challenge, and I am going to invite him on. So let me just, like a pro, find him on here. And there he is. I've invited him. So, Steve, any moment now, should be appearing on our... And then I will have a look.
Is it working?
It works! Oh, I'm so pleased. My nerves just calm right down once this happens. So that's great. Thank you so much, Steve, for doing this.
That's
Are you
all
feeling
right.
nervous?
Not at all. It's good to be here. It's a
You're
technical
welcome.
it's a technical stuff. I was like, what am I touching? What have I got to press here? That was what I was concerned about, but I'm good. We're on.
Oh, you're an actual pro. So for people watching, you're wondering who Steve is. Steve is my pastor. And so I first met Steve about 3 years ago, when I think actually you and Anushka had first moved to Bristol.
Yeah, 4 now.
4.
4. Yeah,
Oh
it's gone quick, innit?
my goodness.
Yeah.
That is actually mad. So yeah, E5, if you don't know it and you live in Bristol, for people watching, it's that amazing building on Jamaica Street with that fantastic butterfly mural on the side that was painted by Emma Holloway, who actually she's part of our church community, and it's all about transformation, and it's just beautiful, isn't it, Steve? I bet you're proud of
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah, it's
Seems
been a
as you
real...
practically live in the building. I bet you're
Yeah.
pleased. It's really
No,
nice looking.
definitely. Big highlight of a good thing that came out of the COVID period, really, for us as a church. It was a great project.
Yeah,
It's
well,
still blessing a lot of people as well.
it really has. So thank you, Emma, for being so creative
Mm.
and doing it for us. But yeah, so Steve, I've invited you on tonight because I really want people to hear your story. And I just think it's amazing getting to know people from how they actually came to know Jesus.
Mm.
So I guess people that might meet Christians on the day-to-day, you kind of think, have they always been that way? But each
Mm.
of us have very different, unique stories of how we came to
Yeah.
the walk that we're on. So I would just love you to start really by sharing a little bit about your upbringing. So
Mm.
up till age 10, go for it.
Go for it. From age 10, let's go back. Wow.
Yeah, go
Yeah.
back up to
Let's go
10.
back in time. Should we do that thing where it goes like that?
Yeah, zoop, 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 special effect.
Wow. Yeah, it's a bit of a blur. I mean, I was raised by my dad in a place called Leighton in East London, in North East London. My dad raised myself and my brother on his own. He did an amazing job, and we just felt really privileged, really, to have our dad have that kind of access into our lives. We obviously, my parents split up when we were about 2 or 3 years old. Myself and brother were about a year apart, and yeah, it was a tough beginning in some ways, but you know, kids just are so resilient. We make the best out of things, and when you're a kid, it was the same for us growing up. Myself and my brother, we found ways to have fun, but obviously, and I was saying to you originally when we were talking about this, you don't know what you're missing sometimes when you're raised. If you're a very single parent, you don't know what it's like to have the other. You know, in our case, a mum around. That was our situation. But my dad did an amazing job. He came over from Trinidad in the 70s, and we were growing up in the 80s. He'd come over. My parents had got together and had myself and my brother. They didn't stay together. It didn't work out, and they ended up separating. And now my dad had already, when he came over, he was already had a wife and a son back in Trinidad when he came over. So this was kind of a pattern for his life, and it was something that I think um, he knew that he didn't want to kind of go through the same kind of pattern that he'd been living in Trinidad when he came over. So he really wanted to try and step up and take responsibility for us, and really that came in the form of really fighting for custody to look after us, and it was a big thing for him. It was a big thing for a black man in those times to get sole custody of two boys as well. So that wasn't a small thing, and he had Christian roots. He's the eldest of 10 in Trinidad, and my grandmother was an incredible lady who was well known in the community in San Fernando and Marabella, where she was from, for praying for people, and a real woman of faith. And that had really marked my dad's experience as well. And I I can honestly say in my life, I think I still experience some of the power of those prayers, and that spirituality has just spread and affected my own life. And so many of my other, the members of the McEwan family across the world, really. And especially my dad at that point, because he was the eldest of those 10. And so she was a great
The
influence on
eldest.
him. Yes, he was the eldest of 10 children. Yeah, so a big family. And so that takes faith in itself. You can imagine I've got one, you got one. That's a lot of
Ten.
work. Yeah, I know.
It
And
doesn't
she,
compute.
yeah, and she literally raised them pretty much single-handed as well, because obviously her husband was off on the ships around the world and stuff. So that was her experience. But she was a woman of faith, and my dad really came to that point of custody. It was a really tough moment for him when he thought that he wouldn't be able to raise us, and it was difficult. My mum was in a difficult place as well. But he really said before God, and he done one of those kind of last minute Lord help me prayers. He'd had encounters with the kind of encounters I'm going to talk about in a little while about with Jesus, and he had a reality of who God was, but he never followed him, and he'd done his own thing. And so he prayed and just said, God, if you give me these boys, I will follow you. I'll become a follower of you. And that's exactly what happened. Through that, the custody sort of came around, and the custody battle, and he got us, and we were with him, and he didn't follow through with it. He kind of just carried on doing what he did, and we saw, it was tough at the beginning. We lived in a squat initially, and we didn't
Wow.
have much money. It was very tough. And one of my earliest memories is my dad at Christmas giving me this pack of motorbikes, these little motorbikes, and I knew how much that was a big thing. It wasn't as it cost him a lot because we didn't have much money at that time. And I just remember that gratitude. Myself and my brother were really raised with a sense of, we really feel like we really owe this guy, for the way that he stepped in here. And we saw that more and more in the area that we're from, because there weren't, dads around, never mind a dad, West Indian dad raising boys on his own. It was very
Yeah.
unusual. And I know some
Well,
people might be offended by that, but back then, in the area we were from, that was a rarity, it was.
I'm
And
sure it's probably still a rarity for anyone. You don't hear of it often, but I know that there are amazing guys up there that step up to the plate, and yeah, that's
yeah,
so good.
race aside, for a man, it's a
Yeah,
challenge. It's a real challenge, and there's
yeah,
lots of men not stepping up to that kind of role. But So we kind of went on a few years, and my dad would carry on really as he was really in terms of infidelity, and running around after women. The different women would be through the house, and it wasn't an unsafe place. He was a great dad in that sense. But we saw, I just remember one day it was a Wednesday evening, a winter's evening, and my dad said, me and my brother were at each other, 1 year apart. You know what it's like, boys in a flat with like, one bedroom. We were tearing the place apart and beating
I
each
can
other up. And yeah. And my dad said, right, that's it. Come on, we're going. And he took us out and just said, get changed, middle of the, like sort of 7 o'clock at night on a Wednesday evening. And I'm like, oh man, Ross, you've got us put in care, mate. What have you done? You've got us put in, we're going to be fostered or something. He's had enough. We finally broke him. And I remember just going through the streets of Leighton, and we arrived at this building, and we went in, and these people were singing, speaking in funny languages, falling on the floor. There was all these this kind of weird activity, and I was like, wow, he has lost his mind. He has absolutely lost it. We must have been about 8 or 9 around that sort of time, and I was just like, man, I think he's completely gone. We pushed him over the edge here, because what is this place? And so he'd taken us along
yeah.
to an Elim Pentecostal church, the one that's the movement of churches that I'm a part of now. And it was just like nothing we'd ever seen. We'd had no kind of experience of an environment like that or church like that. But what we found is that when these kind of meetings that were just out there, we would just sit and just draw and laugh and make fun of it all. But when these meetings finished, these people were really genuinely lovely. They really, really cared for us as a family. And, we'd get taken and we'd go into their homes, and we saw the same thing. And that really marked myself and my brother. We couldn't deny the kind of love that these people had. And it wasn't anything that, we hadn't really seen much of that, to be honest. And so my dad, from that point, what had happened is he had sort of followed through with that commitment that he'd made all those years before, and we just saw pretty much overnight just massive changes in him. There was a peace to him. There was a security to him that, we'd never seen. The women stopped coming through the house, and there wasn't that kind of need to fill his life with all of that. And my dad was like his mother, was someone who knew how to pray. He knew, he didn't need to go to church to pray. He was somebody who knew how to interact with God. And we just started to see this relationship with this invisible God just start to happen. And so we grew up. I got to 16. I grew up in that church in that sense from 8 to 16, got baptized and did all the stuff that you're supposed to do. Didn't make any sense to me, really. Didn't land with me, didn't agree with a lot of it. And at 16, I said to my dad, I want to play football. He said, this is the way my dad was. He was he knew how to balance up, and the kind of the aspects of letting us find our own path, really. And at the same time, letting us know what it looked like to live under his roof. But I came to a point where I said I just didn't want to go anymore. And he would drive us around, ferry us around to all the football matches on the Sunday morning, and then get to church later on. And again, that's what, if I go back and talk to my old mates, that's what they will remember of my dad. He passed away a couple of years ago, was the way he would sort of be at every match. And, he was just fantastic like that. We just saw such a shift and a change in his life. And so I did my own thing really from that point. And 17, 18, I failed my A levels. And I remember just going around to my friend's house, sat down and said, look, I knew my friend smoked weed. I said, look, come on, for the first time, I'm going to try this. And from that point, I think for the next sort of like 7, 8 years of my life, I just smoked weed every single day. That was my thing, every single day. And it increased, the amount of usage increased. That was my thing. And I know for some people that's just a minor, and it's not, it's like having a drink or something. But for me, it robbed my money, robbed my confidence. I was paranoid. I just consistently found myself in a place of real depression and darkness with it. It didn't seem to be something I could shift from my life. I wasn't in control of it. And, you know, for many of I saw lots of friends for what I grew up with. It wasn't just you know, people talk about a kind of an entrance point into other things. For them, it was not losing all those things. It was losing their mind. I saw friends that I had literally end up in psychiatric units because of you know, this kind of stuff. And for me, I went on to uni, got on a university course, as you did back then in the 90s. You could get those.
Oh, hold up. So you failed your A levels
Yeah.
and you got onto uni?
Oh yeah, I think the next year, yeah, I mean, it would honestly back then university they were chucking degrees at you, they were chucking all kinds of courses at you, grants, you know, student fees were free,
You're
all of
obviously a
that.
smart guy though. Still, you obviously wanted the uni more than the A level.
Yeah, I think in some ways, I mean, I never really read a book at university, to be honest. I only started really reading books when I became a Christian, to be honest. I really didn't. I didn't have. I had no passion for what I was studying or looking at. It was just a means to an end. It was a means to get away and have a party, really.
Yeah.
And so I went away to Bedfordshire and I was studying there. And I remember one evening, you know, there was a guy in a room next to us, and we were all smoking and drinking and that. And this guy overdosed. This student next to us, he was using heroin and he overdosed, and the ambulance dragged him out. And we went into his room and just took the heroin and put it in our spliffs and smoked it. And you know, from that night was just that was a bit of a low. I think for me, I was starting to see, look, like where are you going here, man? That's just not. It's not what you've been shown. It's not who you are. But I found myself just sort of spiraling a bit, and it got progressively worse. I finished uni, came back to London, and I was lost, really. I'll just put it that way. I was just really lost. I was working for a pensions company and getting on with it, doing what you do to make money, and no sense of purpose really for me. And I really found that, yeah, that just sort of emptiness, the questions I had about meaning and why I was here, and still for me, Christianity wasn't necessarily the way. I think I thought, well, this is good for my dad, it worked for him, but for me, there must be a lot. It's too narrow, just too narrow for me. That was the way I saw it.
You're
And
just too woke and enlightened.
sorry.
You're too woke and enlightened for a narrow path.
Yeah, I think, but even then, I saw it as restrictive. I thought, the presentation of that, I wouldn't want I thought I'd lose who I am.
Yeah.
And I think, I'll explain later, but I think it's not that, it's a finding out of who you're really created to be. And I just couldn't understand that, and I couldn't sort of see that or appreciate that. But so I remember going, another point for me was a low moment. I went on a boys' sort of holiday to, I don't know, it was like some sort of Spanish island, and got really drunk and met this girl, and we were on this beach, and these guys just came hurtling down the beach like a gang of guys and just started laying into me and beating me up and dragged her off. And I was just, at one point they pinned me down and they just got my arms down the beach like this, and I was just, it's like that people talk about, I know it's cliched, but it's like time stops and you literally just see, you're not feeling the blows, you're not feeling anything that's going on, you're just like, what am I doing here? Is this really what it's amounted to? And I thought that I was waiting for someone to stab me, because that's what I thought was coming next. Now, whether or not that's what actually was going to happen, it didn't matter, because in my head, that's what was going to happen next. And I think if anyone is faced with a moment, whatever that looks like, and lots of people are consistently in life where they're faced with, what's next, or, who they are and where they've arrived at in life. And for me, it was really a big turning point. Literally, as soon as I thought that, I thought, I'm dead here. As soon as I thought that, they literally disappeared. Now, I met the girl the next day. I had to go and find her, because I was like, what happened? These guys just like went, what went on? And she said they were chasing her around the beach, and like she was running off down the beach, but literally it was like that. It was so for me it was, and my friends even to this time now, if I go and talk to them, they'll just be absolutely rinse me about this, because I just came away from that, said I need to know them. I kept on saying this, I need to know the meaning. I need to know the meaning. So they'll just say that to me as a bit of a way just to wind me up a bit, because I was just like, couldn't get my head around what happened. And I just came back in a bit of a daze, really, when I came back to the UK, and stayed that way. And I remember I went along to one of my dad's church meetings. He invited me along, and I thought, yeah, I'll go and just support him and be there with him. I knew some of the people there from when I was a kid. It wasn't a problem for me to go. I wasn't worried or nervous about that. But literally, the moment I stepped across the threshold of the door of that church, I just started like shaking. And it wasn't, I wouldn't describe it as a fear. It wasn't an anxiety, because I was talking to my dad. I was like, Dad, what's going on? You know, I was like asking him, and he was just laughing.
Was he telling you?
He didn't say it. That's my dad. That's how my dad was. My dad was a man of few words. No, he just let what I know to be now the Spirit get on with it.
Yeah.
And it was because it was a moment I stepped across that door, and I knew for me, it was God really shaking me and just trying to just let me know in a physical way, actually. Now, I know that might put a lot of people off coming to church, but it wasn't there was a fascination with it. There was an element of fear and respect, in a way, for someone not human, someone other, really taking hold of my life. But that was mixed with an excitement. That was mixed with a sense of a calling as well. You know, that there was somebody there, and I came away from that, and I couldn't, although I didn't intellectually agree with a lot of what I heard or knew about church, I couldn't disagree with the kind of experience I had. And yeah.
There for 1 second. So I've just seen Amy said on the comments there, I think it would scare me. I think what happens is God meets you where you're at. So just on my own story, every time I'd feel the Holy Spirit, I'd cry. And I remember going to church with my mum, and I was like, I don't even know why I'm crying. And she was like, oh, it's the Holy Spirit. It used to really annoy me, because I was like, I don't want to be affected by it. But that's what God was doing with me. Now I know, when I look back, that's what it was. But Amy, if that would scare you, I don't think that's what God would do, because that's not what he's about. He doesn't scare.
Yes, and one thing I'll say with that as well is there is always a sense of with God, like one of the things that one of the characters of the Holy Spirit is self-control. So it's a bit of a strange one, that he influences and he moves upon our lives, but he gives us self-control. He doesn't kick the door in or control or manipulate like a puppet, you know, like we're puppets or something. There's a respecting for the person. And that was completely how I felt. There was a sense that I could walk away from this moment if I wanted to, and it would be over. But there was, like I said, there was a fascination. There was an excitement or something that
like
keeps
tangible feeling.
Yeah, there's something that keeps you in that spiritual moment that draws you in, and that's exactly what was happening in my life. There was a drawing in at that point, because my heart was ready. I'd had enough with a lot of stuff, and I'd come to the end of my own efforts and my own attempts. And I think when those moments arrive in people's lives, suddenly, I mean, I've been in a church there. They're lovely people. I'd heard that message 100 times. I heard all that stuff. I've seen it. But now, when the Bible talks about how God's message is like a seed, and our hearts are like soil. And when your soil's ready, sometimes because of just the way that life has gone, there's a readiness to receive, and that's what was going on. So it's not a domination or a takeover with God. And the world is the way it is because he respects people's will and free will. And so
Preach it, Pastor. I can hear all the Christians going amen on the comments.
All right, sorry. So yeah, and so for me, I just I remember going to about a year after I went to my cousin's wedding, and he was a born again Christian, and I met these Christians in this church in Ilford who were my age, and they actually believed this stuff. And now, so the way that God kind of ministers or sort of reaches into our lives is he like you said, he meets us where we're at. You read the Gospels, that's how Jesus is. He talks to people where they are at on the journey. And I needed to see that this was...
Christianese explaining for people watching. So the Gospel It's the same story, but Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, so different accounts of Jesus, basically. Go for it, Steve. Back to you.
Yeah, yeah. The story of Jesus' life, that's how he operated and moved. And I saw these people at my age, they're having fun, they didn't need to get drunk, didn't need to get smashed, didn't need to rip into everybody and elevate themselves above everyone else. And they genuinely had something I didn't have. And I was like, okay, that was so important for me to just start to see this worked out in a way that was life. This is like actually looks like a bit of fun here. This looks, you know, and so I went along to one of their church services after the wedding, and I actually, I won't go there. Don't go there. I went along to one of the... No.
Oh.
No. I don't want to implicate other people. It's not good. But I actually I went along to one of their evening services, and I couldn't really. All I know is what that guy was saying. It was something I'd heard before, but I'd never heard it like that before. And what the difference was like we said, this sort of message of God, the truth about why we're here and where we're from, and how God has intervened through His Son Jesus. And as that was sort of communicated, it's like Jesus says, "I am the truth." So people are running around for knowledge or information or understanding, but He says, "I am the truth." Truth is a person, and all I can explain is that what I heard, that presentation of the way the world is from the Bible, had a presentation that came with a person, and He was there and presented as somebody who loved me, who actually knew me, and who wanted a relationship with me more than anything. So much so that He would actually do everything in His power to take away everything that was stopping me from encountering God and meeting with God, and to remove all of the barriers, all of the kind of obstacles that I'd put in the way. And I started to just, I was just blown away by this, by Jesus and what He was like, and this kind of description of Him. And it was from that moment I made a decision. They made an invitation at the end of the service for people to pray a prayer and to invite Jesus to be their Lord, to say, well, Jesus, are you gonna, rather than just someone I visit in a church building, you're going to come home with me and actually start to get into some areas of my life. And so we prayed through this prayer, and part of that was to kind of say sorry for the way that I'd been towards Him as well, because He's the one that essentially paid the price for all the things I've done wrong. And I think when you come near God, one of the things that you do sense with God is He's not like anybody else on this earth. There's a purity to Him. There is a sense of no wrongdoing. Like the Bible says, He is light, and in Him there is no darkness. And sometimes that's something that causes people to run away. But it's not there for us to run away. It's there for us to draw closer. It's fascinating. He's not in this mess. He's not a part of this mess in that sense. He made all of this, and this is what it's become, and He steps into it. And so when you start to see this aspect of who God is, His invitation is much, much more attractive to follow. And so I did that night. I made a commitment to follow Jesus and begin to take Him seriously in His words and His plans as well for my life. And I can honestly say now I think this is what you were talking about. Your friend just asked a question. I can't see the comments, but sometimes there's that thing of comparing all of our different stories. For me, it wasn't a lightning strike, a road to Damascus, like incredible experience that night. It was just a decision from my part, after clearly seeing who Jesus was and could be in my life, not fully knowing what was next. And so I made that commitment, and I literally went home that night. I'd struggled to stop smoking weed. I'd really struggled with that. I literally had the taste just gone from me. It just like had no desire. I knew something had happened because I've seen that in my own life, and I've seen it in many other people's lives. Sometimes God does just reach in and just take something away. You know, he just takes out your life, says, I got that. But there's been other things that he hasn't taken out of my life. And I've had to, he says, no, we're going to do this together. And
Yeah.
you're going to learn. You're going to learn from me, you know, and find out what it looks like to be free and to be secure and to trust me in that. But that was one area for me. It was just absolutely taken away.
How old were you at that point?
Oh, wow. So 24.
24. So that
Yeah.
is just, for a young guy, you'd be in your prime. I'm not saying you're not in your prime now, but
Hello. I mean, wow. How am I supposed to take that one?
As soon as it came out of my mouth,
I know.
I was like,
It's all right. I know what you say. I know what you mean.
Yeah,
That's the problem. I know what you mean.
what I mean is, for a young guy, there's that it's a bold move. It's always a bold move when Christianity is countercultural, and but for a young guy, I just love it. I just love hearing stories like that. Someone in their 20s that just cared more about that than what other people might have thought, because it drew you to make a commitment and think, no, this is what I'm about.
I quickly discovered that when I trusted him with some of these things, I mean, the kind of things that we're talking about, isn't it? Like a young guy would be, you know, girls and sleeping around and doing things your own way all the time, just, you know, whatever it is, just living how you want to live, and having no consideration for a plan that God might have for you. Actually, I just saw, when I trusted him with these things, firstly, the more I just sort of stepped into that, I found a sense of peace, but I also found his help. I did.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people who make these steps towards God, they start to realize, yeah, I can't deny there is actually not just a rule here that says you can't do this, you must not. There's much, much more. There is a person who is assisting and helping you, which makes perfect sense. You know, for me, that makes perfect sense. Why would God go to all the trouble of this rescue mission by sending his son Jesus to die for us and to, you know, to do this incredible rescue mission without an effective plan for me to live with him, you know?
Would you mind if you didn't already kind of do it? Because you're a real life pastor and it's Christmas and stuff, like we're talking about the gospel message.
Sing some songs.
Can you sing us a song?
Oh, no, I can't, no.
Can you give us a little summary of what is the gospel?
So we say gospel. Gospel means good news. And as we said, Jesus is called the Word, and so he is the truth. He steps into a world where you say you've got your truth, and I say I got my truth. They don't match up. Oh, don't worry about that. We'll forget about that for a minute until we start to get into some problems with how we think this world should actually be. And that's the reality. What is the truth? It was a question that Jesus was asked at his trial. You're the truth. What is the truth? And truth is linked to our purpose, our design. Why are we here? We've been created and made by God. We're not just sludge that crawled out the sea and turned into a zoo and then, you know, started to develop in these incredibly ways. He's a designer, and the purpose and the design of God is, the fingerprint of God's design is all over the world. It's all over us, our own bodies. And so he is the creator, and he needed to intervene into what has become a real mess. And I think the pain that we all experience, the questions that we all have, the sense that this can't be it, there must be more than that, is more than enough evidence, if not creation itself and the design that's in the world, to say that there is someone intelligent behind this. Well, Jesus is the intervention with that. And 2,000 years ago, this is the good news. This is what he said he came to bring as well, that he has come to seek and to save the lost. And I don't meet too many people that don't agree with the fact that actually we are lost. There's a lostness
Yeah.
to this world. There's a lostness. There's a longing within us that cannot be met by drugs, cannot be met by relationships, cannot be met by anything else, and that is us being restored to a relationship with the designer. And this kind of this presentation of Jesus, that's what it's called the good news. Now, when we are willing to acknowledge, and Jesus tells a really powerful story of a lost son, a son who runs out and takes all his inheritance from his dad and runs off and spends it, and comes to his senses in a really dark place, in a really difficult situation, and decides to go back home to his father. And if you're really to sum up what the Bible message is and the good news is, it's about returning to a father. He's not just a designer, he's a daddy. And his love is so big, it reaches millions. This is the incredible thing what I found a relationship with God where he makes me feel like I'm the only person on planet Earth. That's how powerful his love is. And millions of Christians testify to that. Millions.
Favourites. We'll all fight over who's his favourite, because that's how you
I know.
feel.
Well, it's me. I'm sorry, bad news. But even there's people, like the Apostle John. There's people who write the books in the Bible who say the same thing. They have that genuine sense that God's love is purely just for them, because it is so uniquely tailored towards us. Like any father would with a number of children, you understand each one and you know not just what they want, but what they need. And we know that. We know what that is if we get everything we want, well, this is it right here.
Yeah.
That's the thing. What we're looking at right now, and what we're experiencing now, what I experienced at 24 was everything I wanted, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good. I needed more. I needed that intervention, and Jesus did that 2,000 years ago upon the cross. And so, for me to say sorry, actually, I'm not going to do it my way. I'm sorry for the way that I've lived. And Jesus, when he died upon the cross, that was, we probably haven't got time to get into that, but the more you understand how much of a rescue mission was needed for us, the more you understand the heart of God. If we want to know how bad things are, then look at the death that Jesus had to die to rescue us. It says a lot about how bad things are. And in Jesus, we talk about the Gospels, these books that talk about his life, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. What we see is Jesus says, it says later on, it says he's the image of the invisible God. What we get now is a picture of who God is in the flesh. It's incredible. That's why I love Christmas. What I love most about Christmas is just the truth of the incarnation, that God became a man to save mankind. I could never say to God, you don't understand what it's like to be me, because he's been in this flesh and blood and he's experienced all of the pain that we suffer. And that's incredible. You'll never see a presentation of God like that. Anyway, the uniqueness of what we say is this gospel message it is very, very unique. The more you look into it, it's fact no human being could come up with this stuff, because we would put man at the center of it. This is very, very clearly otherworldly. It's out of this world, and that's what I saw all of that. I didn't even understand all of that, but it's a knowing in your heart. You don't need all the facts. It is a heart decision. It's something that comes from a deeper place in us, which is that missing part that God has made to interact and know us and be with us. So when we talk about the gospel, it's like that seed again on the soil. It needs to be received. The seed is powerful. I heard a story of a seed that was discovered in a pyramid thousands of years. It was something like in the 1800s, and they calculated if that seed had been planted when it was first put on that stone shelf in the pyramid, it would have produced a harvest to feed the world 100 times over. And that's the reality of what we know, the potential of just one seed. And it's the same with this message. If there's one person who will receive this in their heart, this truth, it just explodes into life. It just it's life itself. And so I would just say that you have more to lose, you have more to gain than to lose when you make this decision to follow Jesus in this way. And it started with a prayer for me. It didn't start with me getting my life together. No one I don't believe people in our church would be saying, "Oh, I got my life together." And no, the whole point of this is we're going, "I need help."
Yeah.
That's the point of this message, is that Jesus says, "I've not come for those that are healthy, I've come for those that are sick." And he also actually got quite annoyed with people that tried to pretend that they were, holy or right with God in their own strength. You can see that a lot when you read, like Gospels like Matthew. You see that playing out. And it's because he's saying, "I've not come for the self-righteous. I've come to bring righteousness, this relationship, this with God, with a holy God. That's what I've come to do." And you need to admit that you need that help, as you would like a doctor, or you need the doctor. You can't just go in and say, "I've got it all sorted," because it's not going to end well.
It's not, that's right.
Let me stop talking now.
No, that's why you're here. I'm just looking at my little notes here. So obviously that was a key moment. That was the central part of how you're here today, really. But after that bit, to fast forward a little bit, so you were telling me you felt, to keep the momentum going after that experience, you really felt the pull to keep going back. You started serving on the youth teams, so helping out with the young people.
Yeah.
And you just got stuck in.
I literally went that next Friday, and I went along to the youth ministry, and I just said to the youth pastor, youth ministry is like a youth club. It's like an open youth club. And I just said to the youth pastor there, the youth worker, I said, "Look, if you don't get me doing something, I'm just going to be running around doing what I was doing." And it was just those little steps, I think, of momentum sometimes that help. And also this sense of serving as well. Actually, that was people might not think that's anything, but for me, I was an intensely selfish person. I was all about me. So to actually start to say, I actually feel a pull to help, or I feel a pull to serve people, it was different. Something had shifted inside of me, and I could see that. And if I just went with it, so I went with the momentum of that. And that's what I just encourage people when sometimes they make these commitments. So someone might be here listening, when they've made a commitment and they've kind of found themselves drifting away. You just need to keep moving it. The Bible calls it walking in the Spirit. It's going with the flow of God's power and energy and strength, and you start to actually find there's momentum. It's a downhill experience. And so I found that I loved being just around the young people. They didn't know what to make of me. But my best days were in youth ministry. I've got to say that I know that I've got ordained 10 years ago as a reverend, but I still look back at those days and
You don't look old enough, Steve.
You
don't look old enough.
I know what you mean. I know, I get it. You're trying to make up for what you said earlier, don't worry.
That's right. Yeah,
I get it. Yeah. But loved it. We just saw like so many young people's, people who've never been to church come in and make commitments. We do concerts, like 300 young people would turn up. It was crazy. It was a great time. And I get phone calls now. I had a phone call last week of a girl who's I call them girls because they're like kids to me, but she's a big woman now. She's a radio host, a radio DJ, and she's getting invited into all these places to just sort of be influential. And she just says she just relates it back to that youth ministry, and just she just walked in off the street after I think she'd been shoplifting that day and came in, and the same experience that I had. This is the thing, is it's really hard for me to deny this, because I've just seen it in person after person respond to this person, Jesus, and I see the results of it. So it's really hard for me. I can get into all the theories and arguments. We can do that, but it's still going to be really hard for me to deny what I've seen, which is transformation. And she would testify to that. And I just got people's lives who are just way off track, I've seen it time and time again.
I can see here, I can see on the comments, I've got two of my mates, the two sisters, and I know that one of them now, her hands are probably going sweaty because she's watched the transformation over the years in her sister, who was way off key. And it is just undeniable. I still can't believe it that this person
Yeah.
is walking. And when you look at how far from that idea, like, it's just crazy that these, I think they're the biggest gospel messages when you know someone close to you, like you see your
Yeah.
dad, and then you've seen countless people since you've been a pastor, I'm sure, and through your walk. It is mind blowing seeing how
Yeah.
much changed. And I'm guessing some of the people watching would have known me before, and I'm not the same person. I'm just
Yeah.
not. And it's it is it's it is undeniable when you see that, when you live
Yeah.
that. It's just,
It is,
it's
and I think
deep.
what we tend to do is go, oh well, that's for you, that's not for me, or well, you can do that. No, anyone who really shares this message of Jesus, the gospel message, are saying this is by God's grace. It's not merited. It's not merited. We don't deserve it. And it's as much something that happens to us as a decision that we make. And it's back to that free will and the way that He flows as well. Yeah, the Bible says you just need, or Jesus says you need just a mustard seed of faith. It's tiny, but the seed is still powerful, and it just is that. And so it's about seeing that actually God has a plan for you. He knows you. He knew you from before the world was even made. He knew you, and it's bespoke. It's personal, and the more we step into that and just begin to trust Him, because it is faith. And I know some people are like, "Oh, faith, what? Everyone just appear in the sky. We just need evidence. That's what we need." Well, people have had all kinds of experiences with God and just run off and do their own thing. That's not going to cure a broken relationship. Essentially, my relationship with God was broken. And
Yeah,
faith is the best cure for a relationship with God. And I have had to trust Him at times where I don't see Him, or I don't feel Him, or I don't know. And actually, when I am face to face with Him, I am going to experience the fullness of that, the benefits of that faith. But even in my own life, there's been times where I've trusted Him, and then He's become more apparent and more real. And I look back and say, "Of course, faith. Of
yeah,
course, it heals. That's what faith is. It heals our relationship with God." And I know lots of people take issue with that, but the Bible is also, God is very plain in the Bible to say this is the way. It's not like a man-made construct faith. It's not like it's not the Illuminati or the government sort of, secret scheme to suppress people. No, actually, God has been plain for thousands of years. Faith is the way. And the more that
yeah,
people have responded, you see this change. You see this evidence of the miraculous in their life.
yeah. For me personally, I just think faith is where the adventure is too. That is where actually the relationship stuff, walking it out with God, it's exciting because
Mm.
you don't know what's going to happen when you feel drawn over here or drawn over there. But it's yeah. Anyway, we're not talking about me, and I want to just touch on the fact that you were in youth ministry for a year before you met your condition.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I have faith, but I'm a bit like, what, a year? God sorted you right out. I just think that's amazing. You got this amazing woman, and tell us about Anushka because
Yeah, I
she.
mean, I'd say, yeah, because how can I? I mean, Anushka. I mean, get on her to hear her own testimony. She's got a much more dramatic encounter with Jesus, and um, like a vision. She basically came to faith for a vision that she saw of Jesus, and you have to hear it. But really, that kind of shaped her seriousness. There was a seriousness. So when I came to church, usually when there's a new guy in church, all the girls it doesn't matter what they look like, all the girls are still like, "Oh, okay, hello,"
Yes, they
you know,
do.
you know. And so I was sort of like, "Oh, wow, this is great, all this attention," but there was just Anushka there who was just not having any of it. She was just like, just so focused. There was such a focus to her devotion to Jesus and her love for God. And actually, what happened to me is it took me a while to actually figure out that's what I needed. You know, I always say this, like Anushka was everything I didn't know I needed. I'd completely built my pursuit of, you know, what people say, like the one, on what I wanted. And actually to find actually God has what you need. And also the timing
Oh,
of it, I was, huh?
I said it's speaking to me. I can feel
Yeah,
it.
come on. I mean,
Yeah.
I was at a, I'd had that sort of, you know, I think it was probably a bit longer than a year actually. I think it was about 2 years, knocking on to 2 years. But what happened was that, no, it was a year. She got saved a year before me. It wasn't we met. Yeah.
Right.
So it's about
Okay.
2 years. So I kind of hit some of those walls of like, am I going to do this for God, or am I going to just do what I always do on the sly, on the undercover,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
still try and have both? And those were really important, helpful moments for me. And I dealt with a lot of kind of my thinking, which was kind of warped around women and actually, you know, what God's plan was for my life. And I remember being at a meal, I kind of just really at this point wasn't much attraction to Anushka, to be honest. That was the way. There wasn't anything between us. No, there wasn't. There wasn't that kind of, you know, because that's what we always
No,
do,
I
isn't
know.
it?
I know.
We do this kind of like spark and things like that, and that wasn't there. And the reason I figured out the reason for that, because I remember we sat down to meal and I looked at her, and it was like there was a spark. Something had happened, and what had happened was God had changed me. And what had happened was this was now not about who, it was about timing, it was about when. And sometimes we're always going who, we're searching, when actually it's more about when we're ready.
So good.
Do you know what I mean? God,
Good.
he's a God of
Yeah.
synchronization. He's a God that kind of brings things together at the right time. And sometimes we do have to be patient in waiting for that. And
7
not,
years, God.
huh?
I said I'm here like 7 years waiting.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, um, God can do that. He does that, and he will do that. That's what he's about. And in trusting our lives over to him, we start to see that we do. And it's just those moments sometimes of not letting ourselves get off track, but actually, I know he's up to something. I'm going to just trust
Yeah.
him on this, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, we courted for like 4 years. So you know,
Wow.
we were there. We didn't sleep together. She was, you know, like much more serious than me in that sense. And I got a few clips around the ear, you know, to let me know like this is not, we're not going down that road, because we're going to do this. We're going to build. We both come from backgrounds of being divorced. You know, we'd experienced the pain and the trauma of all of that. And we're really saying that, are we going to come into a relationship with God and start to build our own way again and just make, you know, the same patterns and mistakes, you know, that had already affected our lives? And so really, we really felt strongly about that. So we actually, you know, we were together for 4 years, and then we got engaged. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
I know,
That's long. And then for a year engagement
because
as
I
well.
tell you what it was, is because we were so focused on God's work as well, though. For us, we were just so passionate about the work that we're involved in. She was a Vidal Sassoon trained hairdresser, and she was passionate about just doing that and serving God there. I was really passionate about the youth ministry and the work that I was involved in. And literally, so for us, that time flew, because we were
Yeah.
just all about the mission. And that was a big part of both of our callings. We would sort of have this kind of almost like a bit of a sense of, I don't know, we just knew we'd been called. And
Yeah.
that's what excited me about, you know, Jesus used to, you see, can I just recommend something as well? Something, it's
Go
called
for it.
The Chosen. It's a video series that's out at the moment, a fantastic like depiction of Jesus. And he just walks up to people and he says, follow me. And you read that in the scriptures, you're like, what? They just followed? They just left their notes behind? But this had been a work that had been going on for a long time in their lives. And when they heard that call, they knew there was something great. There was a different kind of mission ahead of them. And so for us, we had that sense of mission. And for me, that was always what caused us to just move in that period. So we got married, and then, gosh, how many years now? 15 years, I think. We've been married now 15 years, I
Wow,
think. Yeah.
amazing.
So,
Congrats.
yeah.
Oh, I love that. Well, I'm just keeping an eye on time here.
Yeah, of course.
We're approaching 9, so just before we wrap up, we've already touched on some of the stuff, you know, about transformation and things, but being a pastor, you've been around the block in terms of the spiritual block. You must have seen some pretty cool stuff. I want to know what you would say are your or God moments, I was going to say, but I don't know how to phrase it. Like those moments where you're like, wow, what are the wow God moments?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people healed. You know, I've seen people getting healed of, you know, on the point of brink of death and get healed. I've seen all that, but for me, it still is a transformed life. It is. It's seeing people, their life change from the inside out, and in a way that they feel a sense of peace and security and a sense of wholeness from a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. And I still today, that, you know, we just had last week in our church last week, we had Trudy, our
Yeah.
outreach pastor,
Oh
and
my God.
you know,
Crying in that. That was
I know,
powerful.
incredible story. They're the moments you just go, man, you know, that's not something that she could have orchestrated or any of us can orchestrate, and all those sort of changes. And what we're trying to say is that people are all different. People have their own set of challenges with that, but really this is for me the major thing, is that transformation. That's why we're trying to major on that theme as a church, because we believe it's the greatest kind of it's the most attractive part of our message that we carry, which is God has this opportunity to draw you into a living relationship with your dad, your father, your designer, your creator. And you know, so especially in these times, the way things are at the moment as well, I think it has caused a lot of people to really question what is, you know, the meaning. What is the meaning of my life? What's the purpose of my life? Is it just to, you know, 70 years, make money, have children, and then come to the end? Everyone's asking the same questions at the end. Why? And that's what God does. He's interested in that question. He's able to really draw us into a sense of purpose because he's a designer.
Yeah, no, it's so good. And I just think it's really important as we come to a close, just for those who have family members and friends, or you're going through stuff at the moment and you kind of think there is no hope. Like, I know a lot of people that are deep in addiction and gripping, and it just encourages me so much seeing people that are actually walking in freedom, even though they're still, you know, they're in recovery, but actually there's been a transformation there, and that is through Jesus. There's real hope.
Yeah.
But would you just would you close for us in prayer?
Yeah.
I'd really love that. And then everyone watching gets an authentic, real life pastor.
No, yeah. You know, I want to say is, you know, it's just,
Anointed than everyone else's.
I know, but come on, I know you're winding me up, but it is that, it's the reality is that, I don't know, it's that reality that God can reach the most, you know, anybody. You know, this is the important thing. It's really important that God can really, he's got a heart for everyone, and everyone is different, and he acknowledges that. And this is about discovering who you were always meant to be without all the stuff on top. And so I just really pray for that. I pray that beyond all the things that you might feel that have kind of landed on you in life, or marked you, or hurt you, or shaped you in a negative way, there is a God in this world who loves you, and he has a plan for you in all of that. And he's a father. He is a father, and he's got a son, Jesus, who he sent to communicate the truth of who he is and to save us. And so I really pray that for anyone watching this, that, you know, I would say make contact with Katie, because it might be just sat together, that you pray a prayer together where you just ask, well, Jesus, it might be, I want you to start to really speak to me. And I'll just think, it might sound silly, but I just want to encourage you to talk. He is a person who talks back. He's a person that starts to move in your life and he's all about invitation.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. You might start there. You might be even further down the line and you're watching and you're in a place where you're willing to make that step of committing to follow him because you're just absolutely done with doing it your own way. Yeah. And that's another place. And again, I would say, talk to Katie, because that's something she could just sit through and talk you through a short prayer where you start to speak that out to God, and that invitation brings him on board from the inside out. Yeah. So I'm just going to pray. Father, I thank you for everyone listening in and watching in. It's incredible that you are able to meet every person on this earth, and you're able to meet us right where we are, in our confusion, in our pain, in our sense of being lost, and draw us back home. And this is about returning home, back to your design and back to your purpose and back to your heart ultimately. And Lord, I just pray for anyone that's listening into this, that they would find themselves in a place of making a step closer on that journey with you. Maybe it might be to make an invitation and to respond to the invitation that you're giving, just to begin to follow. But maybe it is just to say, I want you to begin to speak into my life and my situation, Lord. And I just pray for them. I thank you for this incredible program that's put together by Katie. And Lord, I pray that people would see not just her heart, but your heart at work through it. And you've got people that are wanting to tell the truth about who you are, and that's just pure love. It takes love to tell the truth in these days. And I just thank you for this time together. And I just pray, Lord, there'll be a real openness as people come to the end of this interview. In Jesus' name, amen.
Oh,
Amen.
thank you so much for your time, Steve.
Not at all.
Really appreciate it.
No.
And just echoing what Steve said, do message me if you've got any questions, or you want to pray, or you actually want to find a church where you live. I'm happy to help connect you in whatever way I can. And next month, just a little heads up, I have got one of my bestest friends, Mimi Cullen, who's going to be joining me. If she hasn't killed me before then, she keeps threatening that she's not going to do it because I'm driving her mad. But hopefully Memes is going to come on, and she's another ledge. So thank you, Steve. Enjoy
Katie, brilliant. This is so good. You're doing such a great job, honestly.
Oh, thank you. Take care.
I think it's BBC next, I reckon.
See you later.
See you later.
Bye. Bye, everyone.